And I know we may have some ad as we go ahead and get started, but I just want to say that we are certainly glad that you decided to join us today on this cold Thursday. As many of you all know, my name is Mitzi Holland, and I'm the director of the Kentucky Advising Academy. And I am joined today by our KAA regional coordinators, Cheryl Brumley and Christy Miller, as well as special guest Jessica Fletcher with KY Stats. And we are very excited today to talk about earning credentials of value and data centered around that. But for now, I'm going to pass it off to our regional coordinator, Cheryl.
All right, hello and good morning. So as we give some time for everyone to join us and get settled, we would like to know, kind of who's with us today. So if you could pop your name, organization, and title in the chat, just so we can kind of know who's in the room. Um, we'd really appreciate that. We also appreciate you being here with us today. And for those of you who are here that do need your ELA credit, that will be shared at the end of our session. So on the agenda for today, we do have a brief introduction, and then we will pass it over to our guest for today's webinar, and that is Jessica Fletcher with KY Stats. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to drop that in the chat, and we'll share those questions at the end during a Q&A portion of our webinar. And then we'll wrap up by going over some ways you can stay connected with KAA as well as our survey so you can continue, so we can continue to evaluate our work and everything we do as an organization. So if we have anyone joining us for the first time, the Kentucky Advising Academy exists to provide support to Kentucky educators in providing students with equitable access to post-secondary advising for successful transitions from secondary education to their desired careers. And KAA does this by providing comprehensive professional learning sessions, online resources, and networking opportunities centered around post-secondary advising, much like you're joining us for today. We do have multiple ways that practitioners are able to be involved. Monthly, we offer our well-advised podcast covering timely post-secondary topics, as well as this monthly webinar. Both are usually related for the topic of the month, but it gives practitioners a chance to convene and take in that content, however best suits them, be that a webinar or, on the road with a podcast. We also have regionally held professional learning events, and we'll be sharing information at the end of our time today about how you can join us for our spring sessions occurring in February. And then finally, we have an online advising toolkit, and we'll also share more about that later. So if you've joined us for, if you joined us for a webinar before or are already taking advantage of everything we offer, we certainly thank you and hope to see you in the future and at all of our events coming up. So with that, I would like to introduce our guest. Joining us today is Jessica Fletcher. She is the Marketing Analytics Director with KY Stats. Jessica, thank you so much for being here with us today. This time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then you can take us away.
Okay, thank you for having me. Let me just hit share because I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. So I want to get my presentation up and running. And here we go. So as Cheryl mentioned, my name is Jessica, and I have been with the Kentucky Center for Statistics for almost 2 years now. And today I wanted to talk about the Students' Right to Know platform mainly. But at the end of the presentation, I'm going to go over a couple of different tools that we have that can also help you as you're advising your students. But to start off with, I do want to talk about the Students' Right to Know. This platform was created by statute. It was created because statute required the Council on Post-Secondary Education and the Kentucky Center for Statistics to work together to build something that would help students be more informed about public post-secondary options, the different majors that you can major in at public colleges throughout the state, and then the outcomes for those, such as what are the potential for employment and what kind of salaries you will earn after you complete a program. So to get to this platform, you can get there a few different ways. One of them is going to KY Stats website and clicking on reports and going through to the post-secondary option. Another way is to scan this QR code. We've done a couple of marketing campaigns advertising the QR code so students can just easily scan the tag and get there on their phone or tablet. You can also go to kystudentRightToKnow.ky.gov and get there just as easily. So as I mentioned, in 2020, the Kentucky General Assembly passed legislation under House Bill 419 that required an annual compilation of metrics that included, sorry, I've got part of my screen covered up here. The cost of college by public post-secondary institutions. How many in-demand jobs are linked to majors that students are most interested in? What financial aid can do to help you achieve your college goals, as well as the dashboard also includes graduation rates and alternative pathways such as career and technical education and apprenticeships. So what resulted in that legislative ask was a dashboard that looks something like this. It includes lots and lots of data. I will, at the end of this presentation, I'll kind of backtrack a little bit and tell you how we got all of this data. But first, I just wanted to point out a few things particular to this specific report. For example, because the legislation just required us to include public post-secondary institutions, you will find that we have all of the state-funded universities like EKU, UK, and U of L, but you're not going to find data in this platform on some of the private institutions like Center and Bellarmine. We did that just because we were following the statute very specifically. But later in the presentation, I will get into where you can find a little bit of detail about some of those private schools for students who do want to attend a private university rather than a public. So the dashboard offers a few different ways that you can explore different majors. So for students who don't really know what they want to do, this can be a little bit challenging because they'll just have to kind of select different majors. So there are two avenues to get there. So if you take that first drop down under, do you want to filter by most popular major or all majors, you can select the top 60, and that's going to give you a more narrow view. If you select that second drop down, you're going to get all of the majors at all of the public universities. I'll get into that in a little more detail in just a second. But first, just to kind of walk you through the dashboard itself, you'll see the first section shows you what occupations you can get with those specific majors. It shows you the typical education level. So whether you are pursuing a credential, associate's, bachelor's, master's degree or higher, is listed in that first column or the second column there on the left. And then if you scroll over to the right, you will see projected annual openings, early career salaries, mid-career salaries, all the way to late career. And that gives students an idea of how easy it might be for them to find a job after they have completed their program, and then what they can expect for salaries coming out of college and then later on into their careers. From there, if you look at the screen on the right side of the page, you will see that there are 4 different universities where a student can major in information technology. And you're going to see a very similar page like this no matter which major you choose. So for example, the example that's on these slides specifically is a student who might be might be interested in majoring in information technology and wants to attend Murray State University. So once you choose those two drop downs, you're going to see the cost of attendance per year. And these are based on 2021 financial aid values that we've received from KAA. From there, you can see things like how many dollars in grants and scholarships students receive, and then what the ultimate net price is after those grants and scholarships are factored in at Murray State specifically. In a second, I will show you something. I'll dig a little bit deeper into how you can look in those comparisons. But let's go through the slides a little bit more and kind of talk through how you might share this with high school students. So I like to use the example of my 18-year-old niece, Bella, who just graduated from Madison Central High School last year. She ended up picking a private school. She picked Berea College. But when she was still kind of deciding, she was visiting different college campuses and trying to decide what she wanted to do. We kind of walked through this tool, and I asked her questions like, what were her areas of interest? What schools offered the degree or the credential program that she's interested in? And just sort of asked her questions that I knew the students right to know could answer. And ultimately she said, I want to be a high school science teacher. So we walked through the students' right to know based on her answer to that question. And a couple of things I want to point out related to that are there are different majors that ultimately can lead you to the same goal, just depending on what university you want to study at. So, just entering secondary education and teaching for high school doesn't necessarily get you to that specific biology major, but it will offer you a little bit more pathways than if you put something more specific as your major, like science, technology, engineering, and math methods, which you can only get at the University of Kentucky, as you'll see there on the right. So if, once we had decided, okay, Bella wants to be a high school science teacher, I said, okay, this is actually a really good field where there's going to be lots of openings for high school science teachers over the next few years. And then I was also able to show her what she could expect for a salary throughout her career if she decides to stick with teaching. She is also considered being a college professor rather than a high school teacher. So I showed her that the projected annual openings were a lot more narrow for folks with a doctoral or professional degree, but the pay scale is a little bit higher. So those are a few things that you can show your students as they're trying to figure out what their interests are. Obviously, and I know all of you are well aware of this, not everybody wants to go to a 4-year college, or they don't necessarily want to pursue a bachelor's degree. So for those students, this tool can also be useful. If you choose a major like industrial mechanics, you will see that there are programs at all of the KCTCS institutions that the projected annual openings for jobs like these are very high, and the salaries are comparable with some of your four-year degrees as well. Next, once you have kind of narrowed down what majors the students are interested in, you will see that there are different colleges that offer the same major pathways. So I wanted to kind of break down what it would look like if you were comparing two schools, apples to apples. So I pulled a couple of examples for elementary education and teaching for students who were looking at both EKU and Murray State University. So if you look at these kind of side by side, or if you were looking at them on, two different tabs on your computer, if you had the tool pulled up, you would see that Murray State tends to be slightly more affordable, and slightly fewer students receive loans, as well as the net price after grants and tuition, or I'm sorry, grants and scholarships are factored in, tend to be a little bit more affordable than EKU. After that, it kind of obviously becomes a little bit of personal preference, because a student might say, well, it's not that much more expensive to go to EKU and I live closer. So it might make more sense for them to choose the school that has a slightly higher dollar amount attached to it. But this is just a good way to kind of help them get a little better perspective on what those schools offer and what outcomes look like. You can kind of also compare the same thing for your completions. So this shows the salaries for students students who graduated in 2017. It shows what their salaries in 2020 were, and their percentage of employment. So you can see, like, between EKU and Murray State, the salaries are very close, but the percent employed tends to be a little bit higher for EKU. So definitely lots of different lenses that you can look at, but help your students really identify what's important to them and how they can kind of use this information to make the most well-informed decision that they can. So that is the report in a nutshell. I do want to mention, I will pause for questions in just a second, but I do want to mention that Kentucky Stats and CPE are working together to really improve the next versions of this tool. So over the next year, we are going to be conducting focus groups. You probably received an email from the Advising Academy in the last couple of weeks that gave you the opportunity to participate. And I really hope that you will kind of take advantage of that, take the time to tell us how we can improve this tool and give us some feedback on what your students are finding hard to navigate and what you are finding hard to navigate, so that we can make it better in future versions. So with that, I will stop and let you ask any questions, and I can go back over some of these slides, and then we'll jump into some of the other tools that we offer. So is there any questions I can answer? I can't see the chat. Let me pull that up and see if anything has come in there.
Jessica, I was going to say, if people want to drop them in the chat, they can, but if they want to just unmute themselves and ask, that would be great as well.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see any questions at the moment.
This is Ashley from Murray State. I had a question about one of your slides a couple slides ago, the one comparing EKU to Murray State.
Yep.
Yeah, right there. So
yep.
In the 2021 cost and financial aid values, that second row says in-state tuition per credit hour. Those figures are not per credit hour. That is probably in-state tuition at full time.
Okay.
Jessica, I can answer this one. Hi, everyone.
Yes.
I'm Brian Mudrack. I'm the data scientist that has worked on this report. You're correct. That is a typo. We're actually currently updating the report, and that's something we noticed. The reason that that's happened is when we present KCTCS values, the way CPE, Council on Post-Secondary Education, provides that data is per credit hour, and something happened just within one of the calculations that header is not correctly switching. So you're correct. It is a yearly in-state tuition cost, not a per credit hour cost.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and as Brian mentioned, we are actually just a couple of days away from posting the most recently updated version of this tool. So it's going to look a lot the same, but the numbers are going to reflect, I believe, 2022 instead of 21. So they will be a little bit more current as far as, or a little bit more recent. So just note that, like, if you download this presentation and you pull up the tool and are looking at it, the numbers in the next couple of days will change slightly. So just keep that in mind. Are there any other questions that we can answer?
I think I've mentioned this before in other meetings. I don't know if you were in the meeting or not. But if we teachers, counselors could have like a cheat sheet on telling us how to get to places. I've gone to KY Stats before, and then when I get in there from however I'm going, I can't find anything, but I know it's in there.
Right. Oh, yeah, we'll be glad to work on that for you. The easy way to get there is to go to our main web page, kystats.ky.gov, and click on reports. Let's see. Yeah, so if you go to the reports page, you're going to find a few different ways to search that. So there'll be a box for K-12, a box for early childhood, workforce, and post-secondary. So if you click on any of those options, you're going to see some different reports. For K-12, for example, you're going to find our high school feedback report and our dual credit feedback report, which I have pulled up as an example here. But yeah, we would be glad to work with KAA on coming up with a cheat sheet for you all to navigate those and easily find some of those URLs.
And I was going to say, Jessica, we could easily add that to our toolkit. So that is something that I've made a note of, and we will certainly collaborate to try to get some of those things added to make it more easily accessible, or, quicker for you to find once you need that information.
Great question, though. Thank you. Okay, well, if there are no other questions on students' right to know, I will kind of backtrack a little bit and talk about our agency. We were created in 2013 under state statute to link data and generate reports about student performance through employment, which is really exactly what the Students' Right to Know tool does. But as Laura was just asking about some of the other reports, we have lots of different ways that you can look at the data through different lenses and learn things about different student groups, different occupations, and really kind of dig into the ins and outs of the Kentucky educational workforce system. All of our data comes from various state agencies and some private agencies, like the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. We work with them a little bit on several reports, but primarily we work with data from the Kentucky Educational Labor Cabinet. So agencies like the Department of Education, the Council on Post-Secondary Education, the Office of Apprenticeships. But we can also kind of take that data and link it to labor market information, which is where the median wages come in and some of the educational outcomes that you'll see in various reports. This is just kind of a snapshot of what some of our reports entail. We can report on post-secondary enrollment, financial aid data, adult education completions, and even unemployment insurance claims. So every month when you see the state unemployment rate come out and on the news, that's actually produced by our team at KY Stats. So all of that leads us to the kind of work that we produce. So I know a lot of you are familiar with both our high school feedback and our dual credit feedback report. Once again, you can get to those at kystats.ky.gov/reports, and just kind of navigate through which reports are most pertinent to the sort of research questions that you have or that your students are trying to answer. The high school feedback report is a great way to get an idea of how your school is performing when it comes to college entrances or ACT scores, and really provides a way to dig into outcomes for various student groups. So we really work to provide lots of equity information. So whether you're looking for information about free and reduced price lunch students versus full price lunch students, or you want to compare a certain racial and ethnic group to another racial and ethnic group, you can do all of that based on your school or your district, and really kind of dig into outcomes like college enrollment or ACT scores or your AP scores, things like that. The dual credit report is similar, but it is very specific to your dual credit enrollment from school to school. This one is also one that we're just about to publish an update on. And you can see different outcomes based on gender, race and ethnicity, or buy free and reduced price lunch for all of the dual credit programs offered throughout the state. And then finally, we have the Kentucky Future Skills Report. This report, I like to think, is great for students who might not know what they want to major in. It can really help them kind of navigate different salary levels, different occupations, and learn a little bit more in depth about what they can expect, or what some different employment outcomes look like. So this occupational profiles is a great way to do that in the Kentucky Future Skills Report. It shows some things that you will see on the Students' Right to Know, but it kind of digs a little deeper into some of the annual wages, some of the opening levels, and the percentage of change in job openings over the years. So, and it's kind of a 5-year projection. So rather than just looking at what the demand is for the next year, it looks about 5 years into the future. So this is a really powerful tool, I think, for students who kind of want to explore different pathways before they might choose a major or where they want to go to school. You back up and talk a little bit quickly about the post-secondary feedback report. This one allows users to explore outcomes based on major, credential type, and demographic. It's a little bit more in-depth than the Students' Right to Know. And this one also includes some of your private universities like Center, Berea College, and Bellarmine. So you can find a little bit more about what the employment outcomes are in a broader context than you can on the Students' Right to Know. With that, I will once again pause for any questions. But first, I like to remind everybody that we do have a mailing list. So every time we publish an update to one of our reports, we will email our mailing list, which is, I think, right now at about 2,500 Kentuckians. So if you're interested in finding out when we're publishing most recently updated data, you will get an email if you join our mailing list. But you can also follow us on Twitter, or just email me with any questions that you might have moving forward. So with that, I will stop, ask for questions, and then turn it back over to Mitzi.
We may still get some questions, and that's great if we do. Just wanted to say that we enjoyed this information, Jessica, and I think it's very beneficial, not just the student right to know web tool, but all of the reports to showcase students the importance of how earning credentials can increase lifetime living wages. And you alluded to the fact that we know not all students are going to go for a 4-year degree, but the goal here is to help them understand that being skilled and having a credential of value, and that can be different for everybody as to what that credential might be, but just having that opportunity to see the difference that earning those degrees can make for the economy, for, like I said, the lifetime wages, all of those things. Very, very important that we help students understand those things.
Yeah, and to that point, like understanding like what those wages mean. So if you wanted to dig in a little bit to like your median incomes for different areas of Kentucky. So students could say, okay, I live in Eastern Kentucky. I want to know what the median wage is and what kind of salary that I might need in order to have a sustainable lifestyle. Some of our reports, like our worker report, which you can find under the workforce section, do dig into some of those median incomes by Kentucky region. So that's a really good thing to remember, is if a student wants to know more about like what they can expect to need to have a sustainable wage, that you can also find that information with some of our tools.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from anyone? If you don't feel comfortable unmuting yourself and commenting, you can drop those in the chat. We want to make sure that you have every opportunity to get the answers that you need while we have Jessica and Brian with us today.
While we're waiting for that, Brian, are there any specific data points or anything that you would that I might have missed that you would want to point out to the group?
Nothing specific comes to mind. I know you've mentioned it a couple times, but we're always open to feedback. I think that's one of the ways that we've always pushed our reports to the next level is by the engagement of people of the Commonwealth. We've often been heard like the PSFR, for instance, post-secondary feedback report. We work closely with the Council on Post-Secondary Education, and they often will say, hey, we have institutions that are requesting this information to be added, or could we filter by this additional piece? And so those are the ways that we try to engage and try to make our reports more helpful. So if there are reports out there that you think oh, this is great, but here's another piece that I think would be helpful, or specifically for the students' right to know, like I said, we're kind of going through a redesign right now. We would love to hear about what you think would make that report even more useful. So I think that's one of the things that we always like to hit on.
Yeah, we are currently engaged with University of Kentucky, who is helping us evaluate that tool. So we would really love for you all to participate in those focus groups and help us make this the best and most user-friendly tool that it can be.
And we did send out an email via our Gov Delivery email distribution list that discussed the study that you all are doing and the creation of the focus groups. So if you all would like information or more information about that, please reach out to Jessica, because that is how they can make this tool better, is by getting feedback from you all. If there are no additional questions, I don't want to keep just wasting your all's time. We want to maximize the time that you all have, and appreciate you all being here, because we've shared a lot of great information, but we can give you a few minutes back to your day if there are no questions. I'm going to turn it over to Cheryl, because she has some things that she wants to wrap up.
All right, thank you, Mitzi. Yes, and thank you, Jessica, for sharing all of that information. I think it is important of how much like some of this data and having access to this data does really let us look at what it means to be earning credentials of value, but even just in terms of, as advisors and the early career planning that, reports like this and using data like this allows us to engage with the students that we're serving. That's by far my favorite part, to give that snapshot of like, here's exactly what you can expect after you finish, whatever that post-secondary choice was. But thank you for that discussion. And I want to take a moment as we wrap up to share a few different bits and pieces of information about KAA and some events that we have going on. So first, if you haven't accessed it yet, we do want to share the Kentucky Advising Academy College and Career Advising Toolkit. This can be accessed through the URL that's provided with the cpe.ky.gov/advising toolkit, or you can use the QR code that is here on your screen. We've recently updated the layout, so we hope that you find it easier to navigate. It's an online resource that's designed to support all post-secondary advising systems and offer comprehensive tools, information, resources, and serve as kind of a hub for advisors of the Commonwealth. It covers topics such as career and academic advising, student development, student belonging, financial aid and literacy, and like much, much more. Each topic housed on the toolkit also has quick guide and start here guide documents. And those are curated and designed to give you a starting point when navigating various post-secondary topics. And the cool part about those quick guides is many of them and the Start Here guides, they're in PDF format. So you can download them, use them, or share them as needed with either fellow educators or professionals or the students you advise. So we encourage you to take a look at the toolkit. I'd also like to encourage you to continue to stay connected with the Kentucky Advising Academy. And to do that, we invite you to join us for our Spring Professional Learning Series, which is supporting students in their post-secondary transitions, milestones, and strategies for success. You can use the QR code on the screen show here, or there is a link being dropped in the chat. Or if you access our toolkit right on the front page, there is a button to register for the event there as well. We have 3 dates occurring all across Kentucky, as you can see here on the screen. And in this 3-hour session, participants will be able to determine goals and opportunities for growth within their advising program by utilizing the newly drafted post-secondary advising framework. Again, all events take place in February throughout Kentucky, and so we hope to see you there. We also would like to let those participants here with us today know that KAA is compiling kind of as many of the best post-secondary advising practices and success stories that we can to share, hopefully statewide. And we'd love to know what is working for you and your students. So you can see what we need on the screen. A 2 to 3 paragraph description of your event, including the following, as well as a picture and/or video that highlights, what the event was. And we ask that if you would like to share your post-secondary bright spot, that you submit this experience by Friday, February 2nd. But if you wish to highlight an event that's occurring later in your spring semester, we are taking those submissions until May 31st. To submit those materials, you'll just email them to mitzi.holland@ky.gov with the subject line Bright Spots. And if you are subscribed to our Kentucky Advising Academy mailing list, then you've also received this in an email from us as well. Of course, to stay connected with us on just a general level, you can always find up-to-date information on our website and toolkit. Links also being sent in the chat. My mouthful today. And you can also follow us on social media at AdvisingKY. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly Twitter. And we often share about upcoming events and advising information on those channels as well. And last but not least, we're also on YouTube, which is where we'll be posting today's webinar for anyone who might have missed it live. And you can also find all of our past webinars there as well. And you can find us by searching Kentucky Advising Academy on YouTube or under the KAA resources section on our advising toolkit. And last but definitely not least, we ask you to please complete the survey so we can continue to improve the Kentucky Advising Academy and our offerings. This is also how we'll process your ELA credit if you need that for today's session. So please scan the QR code or use the link on the screen or that's being provided in the chat to complete this form. And we'll use this to email your certificate, but we appreciate your feedback and evaluation as well. Even if you don't need ELA credit, we encourage everybody to fill this out for us. We hope to see you at future events and we thank you for your participation and we hope you have a great day and stay warm.